You ever have one of those games you played as a kid you really, really loved, but anytime you asked someone else if they'd ever played it, all you got was strange or confused looks? Even years later, you may see it on lists of the greatest games of all time, but somehow you feel you're the only person who's ever played it? No? Okay, go back to playing Fortnite, kid. For me, and I hope at least a few others, that game was Astro Boy Omega Factor. I'm not even too sure how I got my hands on it. If I remember correctly, I think I convinced my parents to buy it for me at like a Sam's Club or something like that. Being a bulk store, I'm almost positive it came with 2 games, but the only one out of the pack I remember was this one, and holy hell did I love it. Unsurprisingly, I had never even heard of Astro Boy before I got this. This was long before that one movie came out, and you'll have to forgive 7-year-old me for never having heard of a Japanese series that debuted in the 50s and had limited overseas popularity. Nah, I guess you're right. I definitely deserve to have my face caved in for that one. Tell you what though, that didn't hamper my enjoyment of it at all. Honestly, I probably liked it more because I didn't know what the hell was going on. You know, as I'm writing this script, I have the sudden horrible realization that this was probably my first introduction to anime. My fate was sealed as a youngin'.
Fucking weeb!
Taking a look at it though, the characters are all very charmingly drawn, and the pixel art does a great job of emulating the drawn art style in glorious 32-bit. The colors in the game are really flashy too, so it was perfect for keeping my young brain fixated. I am not kidding you when I say that when I started playing Omega Factor for this video, just hearing the sound effects dusted off long dormant memories inside my brain, and I was immediately transported back to being a kid sitting in the backseat of my mom's SUV with my red GameBoy Advance SP. Oh yeah, the finger laser! Yeah, the butt thing! I don't think I ever used this move once! Whoa! Okay. Gotta get it together. This game is a beat 'em up through and through and through. Your main attack is a punch, which combos into a kick. You know, so you can beat people up. There's a finger laser to shoot enemies on the other side of the screen, and jets to dodge and reach higher places. You've also got a few special moves that are limited to the number next to the green gauge at the top. You've got a jet move that I never used, a machine gun in your butt, and a giant whole hand disappearing laser. You're, gonna be using those last 2 a lot. Levels generally fall into one of 2 different styles. Most levels are side-scrollers, which need all the baddies on the screen to be cleared before you can progress to the next stage. Then, you have the flying levels, which act more as shoot-em-ups. A lot of em-ups in this game. The enemies are all pretty generic, but they change in every level, which is cool. Honestly though, most of them could fit in any other beat-em-up out there, except maybe for the enemies in the past. If you haven't noticed it by now, this game isn't the most, polished game that was ever released on the Game Boy. Alright, let's get a few things out of the way. This game was clearly made on a budget. Be it money or time, the development team had limited quantities of one or both. You'll see more on that later, but this game very much wanted to make the difficulty artificial to keep you playing for longer. 'Cause this game is short, and the deaths are cheap as hell. I know it's a Game Boy game, but come on, there were some long games on the console that didn't rely on cheap mechanics to keep you playing. That being said, I do think they used their limitations in an interesting way, and there's some really unique mechanics present. The big one is the level up system. During the course of the story, and after finding them hidden throughout the levels, you'll encounter various characters that all have something interesting to add to the story. That was a lie. I have fooled you. Do you feel stupid now? Probably not stupider than me on any given day. Most of the characters are actually just there for filler or to look cool. They're actually all lifted from the extensive line of work from the original creator of Astro Boy, Osamu Tezuka. This is relevant to the leveling system because each person you meet will fill in a list that is supposed to represent Astro's brain. This is the Omega Factor. Each character you meet and get the finality of their story will allow you to level up one of 6 different abilities. The dude in the tutorial says there's 7, but ignore that. He can't count. Again, neither can I, so he might be right. So because of this, you'll naturally be getting stronger the further in the story you get, but you're also rewarded for finding hidden characters throughout the game. Some of them are pretty easy to find, but a good portion of them are pretty bullshit. Like, look at this. There's nothing there. How the hell would anyone find this out without punching every few steps or shooting a laser on every screen? Or this one here. The only reason I know about this is from a memory buried somewhere deep in my brain, past all the math equations I tried to flush out. It's a good thing I'm playing this in the good old year of 2024. We've got our own share of problems we didn't have in 2003, but hot damn is it easy to find detailed guides of just about any video game under the sun. What's not easy is playing this game and not getting frustrated to the point of wanting to break something. This isn't Dark Souls, hard but fair. This is bullshit, and a healthy amount of it too. Almost every encounter late into the game requires you to break it in your own way, usually involving copious amounts of special spamming. And don't get me started on some of the bosses. Not yet, anyway. The story, while nothing groundbreaking or even wholly unique, has a lot of charm to it. I'm gonna get into it now, and I'm gonna assume you don't care about spoilers for a Game Boy game that's old enough to get drunk at this point. I imagine most of this is going to be pretty generalized anyway. That being said, though, the way the story unfolds is both an example of interesting storytelling and an obvious budgetary restriction. There's something special here, and I'm actually pretty excited to be sharing this with other people, but I'm getting ahead of myself. If by now you haven't figured it out, this little dude Astro is a robot. He was the creation of Dr. Tenma, a roboticist who based Astro on his own son, who got isekai'd when he was 9.
And by that, I mean he got run over by a truck.
He was so distraught that his son got to go fight the Demon Lord in another dimension that he decided he'd create a son that would never die. And if Astro somehow did get sent to another dimension, at least he'd be sent packing with some serious firepower. At some point after his creation, Dr. Tenma erases Astro's memory and leaves him on his own. I always thought he looked like a chicken man here. Robots in this universe essentially function as a separate species that are often persecuted or mistrusted for the sole fact that they're robots. Though most of them don't do anything in the story aside from act like normal people. Let's be real here though. People just look at Astro funny because of the fact he runs around in a Speedo and boots. Because he's such an exceptional robot, even though the first stage of this game doesn't have him doing anything too crazy, Astro is asked to investigate a criminal gang that have stolen an artificial sun and are using it over some island out to sea. Astro's metal exterior is the only thing capable of getting close to the sun and the island. The thing was invented to help establish a colony on Pluto, which brings about a lot of questions that the game never delves into, so neither will I. This thing's design is so fucking cool. It really captured my imagination as a child, and I still find it just as cool today. The fight is utter shit though. Like, please tell me how I'm supposed to survive here without spamming the gun that comes out of my ass and makes me invincible. Going down to the island, you meet a small child who's also a robot named Pook. He seems to remember Astro from some time before, but Astro has no idea who he is. After ruthlessly beating up the local wildlife and helping out a mustachioed detective infiltrate the base, we come across the villains discussing something about the secret treasure of Mu, which, if you know your pseudoscience, was a supposed continent that sank beneath the ocean tens of thousands of years ago. There's a lot of esoteric lore relating to the sinking of Mu and the scattering of its people, but unfortunately, this game uses it more as a plot point or set piece. These two are holding Pook captive and force him to fight Astro. Despite the fact that he's a powerful robot and could easily overpower both of these cartoonish crooks, he acquiesces and fights our protagonist. Believe it or not, this is foreshadowing. This is your first indicator that the bosses from here on out aren't going to be fucking around. He changes form, and basically all of them have some unique way to completely fuck up your day. So far though, this isn't too out of line with boss fights you generally find on Game Boy games. Anyway, you beat him, and the bad guys you just met are captured. Yippee! After that, Astro is off to the moon, where a rich man's son has been, I don't know, kidnapped or something? The gravity here is gone, and it makes traversing the area really floaty. When you finally find the person you're looking for, it turns out he was a robot named Atlas all along. How shocking! We just met him, and I am shocked. You better get out of his way immediately when the fight starts, or he'll one-shot you faster than that guy who killed Buster Scruggs.
You need a count?
No, sir.
In the fight's second half, he's got a beam encircling him that is impossible to fully dodge without the invulnerable ass gun, but he's taken down easily enough. After that happens, a stasis pod containing a young woman descends from the ceiling, Atlas gets a headache, and flies off. The naked woman is then completely forgotten about and left to her fate of eternal slumber. This is getting more and more shonen-esque as we go on, but I think it can be forgiven for being based on such an old property. Not that this is necessarily something that warrants forgiveness, but I can see how this could border on being too anime for some people. After that, it's off to Antarctica on a giant undersea train. Why Antarctica? Because there's apparently a country there, and the current politician running for the presidential seat is a robot named Rag. Why on an undersea train? I don't know, it's cool, I guess. Here you meet Duke Red, an international politician that's a huge supporter of robots' rights, and his daughter Nuka. After you meet them and the president, a group of robot-hating terrorists attack and blow up the soon-to-be president. This is fictional. I am speaking of an anime robot in a video game. Please don't kick down my door, it's just a game. This part was the first time in the game I wanted to stick a fist through my computer. Game Boy screen. Yeah. These fuckers in trench coats are never-ending, hard-hitting, and constantly shooting. Fuck taking them out how you want to, it's ass guns and arm lasers for the next 5 screens. Like, look at this shit. How the hell could you feasibly beat this with enough health to take on the boss at the end without spamming invulnerability? It fully crosses the line into absolutely ridiculous. Plus at the end, the leader of the terrorists fights you with his giant fucking robot. Ugh. You do take him out and unmask him though, revealing a man that looks exactly like the robot Rag. Turns out he created the robot to campaign for the presidency in place of him, but he gained sentience and outed everything before announcing his own run at the presidency. Of Antarctica, need I remind you.
What do we do?
Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?
This whole reveal is upended by the train they're on phasing out of existence and the characters ending up back in time. Because every good story needs time travel, Shiraku here is the leader of Mew and has teleported you back in time because he, wants the train, for reasons. Pook is there and doesn't recognize Astro, completing the loop from before. Also, everyone is gonna be a slave now. If the backbreaking work doesn't kill you, the sinking of the continent beneath the ocean in a few years surely will. Luckily for our group, Pook comes in to save them and Astro fights his way back to Tien Shenhan here. Before we get there though, the screen before the confrontation is the most bullshit thing I think I have ever experienced in any game ever. I'd come up with some sort of derogatory nickname to call this part if I didn't want to forget it ever existed. Giant rolling discs are descending down a slope and you have to use your jets to dodge your way through them. Only problem with that is that the discs are perfectly spaced apart in such a way that dodging through one basically guarantees you'll come out of your iframes while you're inside of the next disc. And they don't do just a little bit of damage either. Then, once you make it up to the top, the discs are now enormous. The same issue still applies, except this time you have to be on the ground when you dodge through, as trying to dodge through the whole diameter of the disc is basically a promise of death. There's also a hidden character here, making it even more frustrating. I fucking hate this part. The fight after has its own share of shit, but it's not the worst fight in the game. After beating his ass, Shiraku tells you you'll see him again because he's an anime villain. And he's got a potion that lets him travel through time, or puts him in a sort of hibernation? It's not really clear, just don't think about it too hard. After an indeterminate amount of time has passed, Astro has figured out a way to get back to their time. He also states that time travel is impossible. Again, just don't think about it too hard. The terrorist leader from before, whose name is Rock, if you even remembered he existed, has decided he's going to stay in Mew and help lead the people there.
Bruh.
What part of sunken beneath the ocean do you not understand? Oh well. That wraps up a plot thread, as after this, you never see him again. Back in the present, we find out it's not so present, but a few years into the future. In that amount of time, robots and humans have gotten into a globe-spanning war. Much of the planet has been destroyed, and robot kind is being led by a faction headed up by this weirdo here.
What is that?
And his group of world's strongest robots. It's join or die, and Astro refuses to fight humans, so you gotta fight all of these dudes. I'm not sure if this is a nod to the laws of robotics, but something seems a little off with this conclusion. There's nothing too terribly noteworthy about the fights. I think at this point you get that there's copious amounts of bullshit to be expected, except for the first and the last fight. First dude is a praying mantis that has impenetrable shields every time you attack, so you've got to get him to throw up a shield and then shoot him with your laser. Try to shoot him with your laser when there's no shield up, and he'll teleport over you and fuck up your day. It is not clear at all what to do here, and I struggled with it for a while before finally caving and looking up how the fuck to kill this bastard. He's not too hard once you know what you're doing, but I really have to wonder how child me figured this one out. The last fight is against a robot named Pluto. True to his appearance, he's an absolute damage sponge and has a whole slew of moves that will just fucking truck you if you're not careful. Sometimes he'll do a stomp attack before you even have a chance to register that the fight has started. I knew I was in for it when my highly upgraded arm cannon just barely cleared one orb of his health. Regardless, beating him takes you to the weirdo from before, who reveals himself to be Shiraku. Oh no, whoever could have guessed? He directs your attention upwards into the sky, where a giant metallic head is floating in the atmosphere. It calls itself Death Mask and is the goddess of destruction there to levy judgment on the denizens of Earth. Jesus Christ, this is not where I saw this going. I'm not sure where I thought this was going, but this certainly wasn't it. The Death Mask itself, though, is so fucking sick. It's scary on an unknowable cosmic level, and its design is as intriguing as it is creepy. I want to know more about it, but the mystery is almost as intriguing as its design. I would like to note that most everything in this game is based off of already existing Osamu Tezuka stories and material. Most characters are from something in his extensive catalog of work, but as far as I can tell, the Death Mask is original to this game. I love it. Anyway, it finds the citizens of Earth to be exceptionally shit and destroys the planet, including everyone on it. The end. That's the end. I'm not kidding. That is the end of the first part of the story. But everyone still died. Astro is greeted by a giant bird lady called the Phoenix, who offers him the ability to travel through time and sends him back to the start of his journey with all his memories and powers intact. Thus begins the second half of the story. Now, remember earlier how I said how this story unfolds as both an interesting storytelling device, but also a clear example of the development team's lack of time or money to work on the game? Yeah, all the levels you play now are ones that you've already played. There are some major differences in the way the story unfolds, but not so stellarly that they couldn't reuse most of the available assets. You also get a level select to allow you to jump through different levels to find things you missed and to complete the last part of the narrative. You have to beat the level again before it appears in the level select, so you have to play through the whole game again before you can freely select from all the levels. If you look over to the side, there's even some extra levels that'll become more relevant later on. Before we get to the continuation of the game, we get a conversation between someone named Daichi and someone named Primrose. Not Primrose, no. Amazon Primrose says that she's going to be admitted into the hospital the following day due to a terminal illness she suffers from. Daichi doesn't like the idea of not seeing her again, despite having literally just met her, and resolves to visit her while she's in the hospital. It's implied that this takes place long before the story starts, but what's being conveyed here remains largely mysterious. Unless you were paying attention earlier in the story. For starters on differences, Duke Red is replaced by this jackass, Drake, who really fucking hates robots. You meet him in the first level, and it actually does a pretty good job showing you how this timeline is going to be different. Things aren't going to be as overtly bright this time around. He's really the most important change that's occurred in this reset timeline, though it's never really stated why things are different. I'm too stupid to even begin to grasp the mini-worlds theory, so this one's getting chalked up to robo-shenanigans. I'm going to be completely honest with you here. For the most part, the main story plays out pretty much the same, except with the addition of a few new characters, including this guy, the Blue Knight. He's a champion of robots' rights, but has a much less, shall we say, political approach to it. He's actually the leader of the world's strongest robots in the final act of the game. The large variation in narrative comes about when you start hopping from level to level, following leads and hints given to you by newly discovered characters or by new lines of dialogue from existing characters. Sometimes it'll tell you directly which character you need to speak to, and sometimes it'll be a little more cryptic. Following the leads across time and characters is the final quest line you'll need to follow to get the true ending of the game. Going back to the levels on the side, one of the leads you follow brings you to this archaeological dig, where this dude is digging up Shiraku, but isn't aware he's unleashing evil upon the world, and doesn't want to hear what Astro has to say about being cautious. To show him you're serious about what you're saying, you have to have met this golden alien robot man who's hidden on an elevator earlier in the game. I found him completely by accident, so this was a lot less frustrating than it could have been. Wow, Astro, I didn't believe you before, but you know a golden alien, so you must be telling the truth. This really amounts to jack shit, since Shiraku escapes off screen anyway. Another side level is Dr. Tenma's house, which is normally empty until this guy here tells you to go take a stroll over that way. There, the good doctor will appear and tell Astro about his goals for him, and more about his history. He's pretty nice to Astro here, but almost every other time he shows up, he's an absolute dick. Come on, dude, lighten up. I'm sure your son has defeated the Demon Lord in that other world by now. Anyway, following the leads and finding new characters hidden in the levels is actually really engaging. It makes you really pay attention to the honestly pretty basic story, but it's really effective in getting you immersed into it all. It's also pretty unique, and I can honestly say I haven't seen story implemented like this in any other game. It's really memorable, and honestly one of the best ways I've seen a game use budgetary restraints to its strength. I know I keep saying stuff like that, but damn. Full disclosure, if you haven't picked up on it by now, I really like this game. It's flawed and complete fucking bullshit at times, but it's just so much fun. No matter how many times I died, I really never got so fed up with it that I wanted to stop playing. The fighting mechanics are just such a joy to use, and they perfectly scratch an itch somewhere deep in my brain that I didn't even know needed scratching. And as simple as the story might be, and even though I have no connection to any of these characters aside from playing this game as a kid, I still found it really engaging. I may be glossing over following leads between characters and levels, but that's just to keep the video from being repetitive. Circling back to following leads from different characters across the time span of the game, one of the threads takes you to this guy, Kennedy, who says he saw a cute girl and was waiting around to see if she came back. Damn, dude, gotta respect the hustle. Turns out he'd seen Nuka and...
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
Never mind.
Never mind, kill it with fire.
Waiting to call the police until after he gives us some information, he directs us to a bunker something that his dad runs. There, Duke Red is hiding out and reveals to Astro that not only did he develop the death mask, that his daughter is the one who functions as the control for the device because she's a robot. You heard that right. What initially presented itself as a god from beyond the boundaries of our solar system and a completely unknowable force of unknowable origin is revealed to be a creation of a politician and is powered by a little girl. Not gonna lie, this really let me down when I first got to this point. It's a pretty lame explanation, but it factors into the story later on, so it's not the worst thing ever. Anyway, Blue Knight follows you in here and in true knightly fashion challenges you to a joust. This is one of the few gameplay variations that happens throughout the whole game, and it's pretty cool. It's not hard, but it's interesting. Astro wins the joust, knocking off Blue Knight's face mask and revealing him to be the robot Rag, who was rebuilt after having been destroyed much earlier on in this timeline. After some further time-hopping shenanigans, Drake reveals that his daughter was kidnapped and killed by robots, leading to his hatred. Haven't we seen this somewhere before? Also that he's got a fucking bomb and will use it to kill himself and Duke Red if he isn't given the location of the death mask so he can wipe out all robots. I can't think of a single flaw in this plan. Spoiler alert, we have seen the girl in that picture before. It's the cryopod that floats down after we beat Atlas on the moon. This is the Prime Rose we saw in the flashback after the timeline was reset, and she's in cryosleep to prevent her illness from progressing. She's also naked because this is anime. Only one doctor in the world could save her, but he's no longer practicing medicine. Turns out it's because he's being blackmailed to stop by the same guys who'd stolen the artificial sun, so we gotta talk to this guy who hates robots, but is willing to help Astro anyway. Very convenient. You beat Pook again, and the robot hater tricks the criminals into releasing the doctor's daughter. We then take her back, defeat the goon holding the doctor hostage, and take the doctor to the space station to perform surgery on Prime Rose. How does this all fit into the time travel aspect? Fuck if I know. I know I said it before, but really, truly, just don't think about it too hard. You have to fight Atlas again, and I fucking hate it. As easy as the fight is normally, now surgery is being performed below you in a fragile bubble that ends the fight if it gets hit too many times. You'd think they could have, set this up somewhere else while Astro and Atlas fight, but I got my doctorate from WebMD, so I'm probably just ignorant. Remember how Atlas has that beam attack that spins around him and hits the edge of the screen, and nothing you can do will interrupt that short of you using your ass guns? Yeah, that'll hit the bubble. They were really pushing the artificial difficulty hard at this point. Defeating Atlas here reveals that he's the Daichi from the flashback, surprise surprise, and he took Prime Rose to the moon so she could see it before she died. But she wound up in a semi-permanent stasis, and he wound up dead from the radiation from the facility on the moon creating the death mask. After that, he was turned into a robot by Dr. Tenma. Prime Rose breaks the space-time continuum by telling her father the truth, dooming this timeline and everyone in it. guess. Drake realizes it's the truth and backs off, disarming the bomb and getting off scot-free. Astro has a talk with the Death Mask before the three-eyed menace Sharaku interrupts them in the last two lines of the stage. Talk about an ass pull. The background here is cool as fuck though. On the way to the fight, Sharaku pulls some shenanigans and sends us into a boss rush. Yay, my favorite. At the end, we face him one last time in front of the Death Mask. The visuals in this section have been really stellar, and I'm really glad they put so much attention to the final stage of the game, even if most people who played this probably wouldn't make it all the way here. After we beat him, Sharaku reveals that the type of metal that the Death Mask is constructed of was brought to Earth centuries ago by an alien. Because time travel isn't enough, we've got ancient aliens going on now. You know, come to think of it, I should have seen this coming with the earlier inclusion of Mew in the storyline. Pick, is the key to unlocking the true potential of the metal, I guess. He doesn't even argue, he just gets in it and starts trying to rip Astro's head off. Seem familiar? After you blow him up, all the chunks of the alien metal start falling into the sun. It's gonna explode. What remains of Nuka tells Astro that she has a control module for the metal and asks to be thrown into the sun to stop it. Fuck it. I'm on this train till it's off. Hurtling toward the sun, Astro decides that it would take too long if he just kind of tossed her in, and decides to go in with her. So into the sun they go, saving the sun from exploding and everyone on Earth. Before the Phoenix allows Astro and Nuka to both be brought back to life, no timeline reset required. Who could have seen that coming? After it all, we get a conversation between Dr. Tenma and his late son Tobio over shots of the cosmos. Astro and Nuka fly home, and we get a the end to wrap everything up. It's a genuinely nice ending, even if you could see the resurrection coming from a mile away. To this day, this is the only Astro Boy media I've ever consumed, and I really do plan on keeping it that way. Every other story featuring these characters are all different, and I want my experience with this world and everyone in it to be solidly just this and nothing else. Maybe that's the nostalgia talking, but there really is something special about the experience I had while playing this game. So what can I say about all of this that I haven't already said? Does this game have issues? Of course. I think I've illustrated that pretty well. Is this game still enjoyable despite those issues? Highly. As much bullshit as the game can throw at you, it's still highly forgiving. Every death just takes you back to the start of the section you are on, and there's no limit on lives. There's also something very satisfying about using the litany of weapons you have at your disposal. Maybe deep down, I'm still the little kid that would put any large tube-like object on my arm to pretend I was shooting lasers like Astro here, but on the surface, I'm a jaded adult, and I was still able to get a lot of enjoyment out of blasting away enemies with a brightly colored beam. If literally any part of this sounds interesting to you, I highly encourage you to give it a shot. Be it mechanics or story, you won't be let down. I generalized a lot of the second playthrough's character questline too, so there's still a lot of hidden characters to find and time jumping to be seen. I can honestly say that even though the plotline is pretty generic by today's standards, it's really solid for what it is. It genuinely feels like you're playing through an action shonen anime with escalating power levels, and it's hard to beat that. If you don't think this sounds up your alley but still made it through the whole video, I'm just glad you know about it now. Thanks for joining me on this look back into my childhood. Hopefully after this, there'll be more people in the world who will know what the hell I'm talking about when I mention this game. If you actually have played it, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. I'd love to hear your childhood stories about it, but don't waste my time if you played it as an adult. If you liked the video or anything I had to say in it, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to hear more of my moderately adequate voice, hit that subscribe button and check out this playlist with all my other reviews in it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!